The message on the secret phone said, "If you don't tell Olivia tonight, I will." My hands started shaking because Olivia was me, and the phone wasn't mine. It wasn't my husband's either. At least, that's what I thought. 30 minutes later, I learned my husband had a daughter I never knew existed. An hour later, I learned someone in our family had been lying for decades. And before Thanksgiving was over, a family member would run out of my house after a secret they'd buried for years finally came to light. I thought I was about to uncover an affair. The truth was far worse. My name is Olivia Rose Bennett, and this is the Thanksgiving dinner that changed my life forever. Welcome back to Inspired Real Events, where ordinary people meet impossible family and the quiet ones learn the loudest lessons. If betrayal, gratitude, and slow burn justice are your thing, you're in the right place. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, and be sure to subscribe. My name is Olivia Rose Bennett. I'm 35 years old, born and raised in Ohio, and until last Thanksgiving, I believed I had the kind of marriage people secretly wish they had. Not perfect. Nobody has a perfect marriage, but stable, safe. The kind where you know exactly who will be sitting beside you every night. The kind where you can predict someone's laugh before they laugh. The kind where you can finish each other's stories, or at least, I thought I could. If someone had told me that one tiny vibration beneath a dining room table would destroy everything I thought I knew about my husband, I would have laughed and handed them another slice of pumpkin pie. Because that morning started like every Thanksgiving morning before it. Warm, busy, chaotic, beautiful. The smell of turkey filled the house before sunrise. My husband, Ethan Bennett, was downstairs pretending he knew how to cook while secretly creating disasters in my kitchen. I walked downstairs and found flour covering half the counter. "Ethan!" He turned around wearing an apron that read King of the Grill. "I can explain. There is literally flour on the ceiling. Gravity is complicated." I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the coffee mug in my hand. That was Ethan, always making people laugh. Always finding a way to make every room brighter. When we first met 12 years earlier, that smile was what got me. Not because it was handsome, though it definitely was. It was because he smiled like he meant it, like the world wasn't such a bad place after all. And for 12 years, I'd believed him. We had a beautiful house, a golden retriever named Daisy, a circle of friends who adored us, a marriage people described as relationship goals, every anniversary photo, every vacation picture, every Christmas card. Everything looked exactly the way happiness was supposed to look. That's why what happened that evening hurt so much, because disasters don't always arrive with warning signs. Sometimes they arrive wearing a smile. Sometimes they carve the turkey. Sometimes they sit right beside you. And sometimes they kiss your forehead before dinner. "Happy Thanksgiving, Liv," I smiled. "Happy Thanksgiving, if only I had known." By 3 o'clock, the house was packed. My parents, my younger sister Emma, Ethan's parents, his brother Ryan, 3 cousins, 2 neighbors, kids running everywhere, football playing on the television, laughter bouncing through every room. The entire house felt alive. At one point, I stood in the kitchen doorway watching everyone. My father arguing with Ryan about football. Emma stealing olives from the appetizer tray, my mother pretending she wasn't stealing them too, and Ethan, standing in the middle of it all. Laughing, talking, playing host, looking exactly like the man I'd fallen in love with, the man I trusted more than anyone, the man I would have defended against any accusation, the man who was about to become a stranger. Dinner started around 5. Everyone squeezed around the oversized dining table. The turkey looked perfect. The mashed potatoes disappeared almost instantly. Someone spilled cranberry sauce. Children argued over dinner rolls. Normal Thanksgiving chaos. I loved every second of it. Then something happened. A tiny sound. So small that nobody else noticed. Bzzz. A vibration. That's all, just one vibration. I looked around. Nobody seemed to react. Then it happened again. Bzzz. This time I realized it wasn't coming from the table. It was coming from underneath it. I frowned. My first thought was that one of the kids had dropped a toy, but then I noticed Ethan. His smile disappeared for half a second, only half a second. Most people wouldn't have caught it. I did, because after 12 years you notice tiny things. The way someone's eyes shift, the way their shoulders tense, the way their smile changes. His hand immediately moved toward his pocket, then stopped. Then casually returned to his lap. Nobody else noticed. I did, and suddenly that tiny vibration felt louder than the entire room. A strange feeling settled into my stomach. Not fear, not yet, just curiosity. The vibration came again, bzzz. This time Ethan knocked his fork onto the floor. The sound startled everyone. "Oh no," he laughed awkwardly. "I'll get it." He disappeared beneath the table, only for a second, then emerged holding his fork, too quickly, much too quickly, and his face looked different, not guilty, not exactly, nervous. The rest of dinner continued, at least for everyone else. For me, something felt wrong. I couldn't explain it, I couldn't prove it, but the feeling wouldn't leave. Have you ever felt your instincts whisper something? Not scream, whisper. A quiet voice saying, "Pay attention." I tried ignoring it, I really did. I laughed, I smiled, I participated in conversations. But every few minutes I'd catch Ethan checking something, looking downward, then immediately looking away. By dessert, I knew something was bothering him. The question was why. Around 7 o'clock, everyone moved into the living room. Football, coffee, pie, the usual traditions. I headed into the dining room to start cleaning. Half-empty plates covered the table. Glasses sat everywhere. I began gathering dishes. Then I froze. Something black sat underneath Ethan's chair, hidden against the table leg. My heart skipped. I bent down, picked it up, and stared. A phone, not Ethan's phone. At least I didn't think so. His phone was an iPhone. This wasn't. This was a cheap black Android device. No case, no identifying marks, no wallpaper visible, just a lock screen. For a second, I actually smiled. Maybe one of the guests dropped it. Simple, nothing strange. Then the screen lit up. A notification appeared, one single message. The sender's name wasn't saved, just a number. But the message made my blood turn cold. "Are you going to tell her tonight?" I stopped breathing. The room suddenly felt smaller. The air felt heavier. I read the message again and again and again. "Are you going to tell her tonight?" Tell her what? My hands started shaking. There had to be an explanation. There had to be a joke, a misunderstanding, anything. But deep inside, that whisper returned. "Pay attention." The phone vibrated again. Another message. This one arrived before I could stop myself from looking. "If you don't tell Olivia, I will." My name, my actual name. Olivia. Every sound in the house disappeared. The football game, the laughter, the conversations, everything faded into silence. Because in that moment, standing alone in my dining room with a secret phone in my trembling hands, I realized one terrifying truth. Whoever owned this phone knew me. And whoever owned this phone was hiding something from me. Something big enough to threaten my entire marriage. Then I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around and saw Ethan standing in the doorway. The color drained from his face. His eyes locked onto the phone. For one long second, neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke. And in that single second, I knew. Whatever was inside that phone was about to change my life forever. For a moment, neither Ethan nor I moved. The laughter from the living room seemed miles away. The football game continued somewhere in the background. People were enjoying pie. Children were chasing each other through the hallway. The entire house was alive. Yet inside that dining room, everything felt frozen. Ethan's eyes never left the phone in my hand, not once. And that terrified me more than anything, because if the phone meant nothing, if it belonged to someone else, if there was a simple explanation. He wouldn't have looked at it like that. He wouldn't have looked like a man who had just seen a ghost. I swallowed hard. "Ethan!" His jaw tightened. The silence stretched. Every second felt longer than the one before. Finally, he forced a smile, a weak one I had never seen before. "Where did you find that?" Not hello, not whose phone is that. Not what happened. Where did you find that? A chill ran down my spine. "It was under your chair." The smile disappeared. His face became unreadable. "Give it to me." The words came too quickly, too firmly, my stomach dropped. I stared at him. No, his eyes widened. Olivia! No, I heard my own voice trembling. Tell me what this is. It's complicated. My heart sank. Complicated, not innocent, not harmless. Complicated, every wife knows the difference. I felt tears threatening to form, not because I knew anything yet, but because somewhere deep inside I suddenly feared I already knew too much. The phone vibrated again. Both of us looked down. Another message. Neither of us touched the screen. Neither of us spoke. The tension became unbearable. Finally, I whispered, "Who is she?" The words escaped before I could stop them. Ethan blinked. "What? Who is she?" His face changed instantly. Shock, confusion, then something unexpected. Pain, real pain. "I knew you'd think that." I laughed. The sound came out bitter. "What else am I supposed to think?" He opened his mouth, closed it, looked away. That hurt more than any answer could have, because the Ethan I knew always had something to say, always. Now he looked trapped, cornered, afraid. The phone vibrated once more. My hand tightened around it. I looked at the lock screen. Another text appeared. "Please answer me. This has gone on long enough." My pulse raced. Gone on long enough. How long? Weeks, months, years? I suddenly couldn't breathe. Every happy memory from the last year flashed through my mind. Anniversaries, vacations, date nights, Christmas, birthdays. Had any of it been real, or had I been living inside a lie? Olivia. Ethan's voice sounded softer now, almost desperate. "Please, not here." I stared at him. Not here, not now. Those words felt suspiciously close to an admission. I felt anger rising. Fast. 12 years. 12 years together. And suddenly he wanted privacy. Suddenly he wanted secrets. "Then tell me." His eyes closed briefly, as if he were trying to make an impossible decision. When he opened them again, I saw something that frightened me. Fear. Not fear of getting caught, fear of losing something or someone. Before either of us could speak again, my mother walked into the room. "There you two are," she smiled, then immediately stopped smiling. Parents notice things, especially mothers. Her eyes bounced between us. "Ethan," nobody answered. "Olivia," still silence. The room suddenly felt crowded. I slipped the phone behind my back. My mother looked confused, then concerned, then wisely decided not to ask questions. "I'll go check on dessert." She quickly disappeared. The moment she left, Ethan stepped closer. "Please." I hated how broken he sounded. I hated that part of me still cared. I hated that I wanted to believe him, but most of all, I hated the phone, because 5 minutes earlier my marriage had felt secure. Now everything felt uncertain. I stared at him. "If there's nothing going on," he interrupted immediately. "There isn't." The answer came so fast it almost sounded rehearsed. I narrowed my eyes. "Then unlock it." His face went pale. My heart shattered a little more. There it was, the reaction, the hesitation, the fear, the things nobody wants to see from the person they trust most. "Ethan," my voice cracked, "unlock it." He looked away, and in that moment I felt something break inside me, because guilty people lie. But sometimes the worst lies happen when someone says nothing at all. I turned away before he could see tears forming. I wasn't ready to cry, not yet, not until I knew the truth. The phone suddenly rang, not vibrate, ring. The sound exploded through the dining room. Both of us jumped. An unknown number. The screen glowed brightly. For a second, neither of us moved. Then I answered. "Hello." Silence, just breathing, slow breathing. My heart hammered. "Hello." A woman finally spoke. Her voice sounded nervous, terrified, as if she regretted calling. "Olivia." My blood turned cold. "Who is this?" Silence again, then a shaky breath. "I'm sorry." I glanced at Ethan. His face had turned completely white. The woman continued, "I'm so sorry." Every nerve in my body tightened. "What are you talking about?" The woman's voice cracked. "You deserve to know the truth." I nearly dropped the phone. My knees felt weak. The truth, the truth, the truth. The phrase echoed through my head like a siren. "What truth?" The woman hesitated. For several agonizing seconds, she said nothing. Then, "Ethan has been hiding something from you." The room spun. I grabbed the edge of a chair. I couldn't feel my fingers. I couldn't feel my legs, only my heartbeat. Loud, violent, relentless, I looked at my husband, the man I loved, the man I trusted, the man standing 10 feet away looking completely defeated, and suddenly I wasn't sure I knew him at all. "What has he been hiding?" The woman inhaled sharply. Then I heard something unexpected. Crying, not fake crying, not dramatic crying. The kind that comes from genuine heartbreak. The kind people can't control. When she finally spoke, her voice barely existed. "He didn't tell you because he was trying to protect you." I frowned. Protect me? The statement didn't make sense. Nothing about this made sense. Ethan looked as confused as I felt. Then the woman said 7 words that changed everything. 7 words neither of us expected. 7 words that had absolutely nothing to do with another woman. Nothing to do with an affair. Nothing to do with cheating. Nothing to do with secret romance. Instead, she whispered, "Olivia, I'm your husband's daughter." The world stopped. Every thought vanished. Every sound disappeared. Every assumption I had made exploded into pieces. I stared at Ethan. He stared at me. The phone nearly slipped from my hand. Daughter. My husband had a daughter, a grown daughter. My mind refused to process the words. This had to be a mistake. A prank. A misunderstanding. Anything, but when I looked into Ethan's eyes, I saw something that frightened me even more than betrayal. I saw truth. And for the first time in 12 years, I realized my husband had been carrying a secret so enormous that it could destroy every relationship in this house, including ours. The voice on the phone trembled again. "Olivia!" I couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't think. Then she whispered one final sentence before the line went silent. "And my mother died 3 months ago." The call disconnected. The screen went dark. And standing there in the middle of Thanksgiving dinner, with my entire family laughing in the next room, I realized that the biggest secret of my marriage wasn't an affair. It was a daughter I had never known existed. And somehow, I feared that wasn't even the worst part. For several seconds after the call ended, I couldn't move. The phone felt heavy in my hand, heavy enough to pull me straight through the floor. My husband had a daughter. The words kept repeating in my head over and over, like a song I couldn't turn off. I looked at Ethan. He looked exhausted, not surprised, not confused, not shocked, exhausted, as if he had spent years carrying something too heavy to hold anymore. "Tell me she's lying." My voice barely sounded like mine. Ethan didn't answer. My stomach dropped. "Tell me." His eyes filled with something I'd never seen before. Regret. Deep regret. The kind that settles into a person and never leaves. And then he whispered the words I was terrified to hear. "She's not lying." Everything inside me went numb. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone. I wanted to wake up. Instead, I just stared at him, because somehow, after 12 years of marriage, I was looking at a man I didn't fully know. "When?" The question escaped my lips. "When did you have a daughter?" Ethan swallowed hard. "Before I met you." I felt a tiny flicker of relief, not because the secret disappeared, not because the pain lessened, but because at least he hadn't betrayed me during our marriage. At least not in that way, yet the relief lasted only seconds because another question immediately appeared. "Why didn't you tell me?" His face crumbled, and for the first time that night I saw genuine shame, the kind nobody can fake, the kind nobody wants to carry, because I thought she was dead. I blinked. "What? I thought she died." The room spun again. Nothing made sense anymore, not one thing. "Ethan," my voice trembled. "Start talking." He nodded slowly. The look on his face told me he knew there was no escaping now. No more secrets. No more hiding. No more pretending. The truth had finally arrived, and it wasn't leaving. Ethan pulled out a chair and sat down. For a moment, he looked much older than 40, older than I'd ever seen him, as though years had suddenly appeared on his face. "I was 21. His voice sounded distant, like he was speaking from another lifetime. "I was stupid." I remained standing, my arms crossed tightly, protecting myself, bracing for impact. "There was a girl named Claire. I had never heard the name before, not once, not in 12 years, not ever. We dated for about a year." His eyes focused somewhere far away. "We were young, reckless, certain we knew everything." I said nothing. My heart pounded harder with every sentence. "Then Claire got pregnant." The words hit me like a truck. not because of the pregnancy, because he had hidden this entire chapter of his life, an entire chapter, a child, a woman, a history gone, buried, erased, or so I thought. Ethan continued. We were scared. I imagine. Neither of our families approved. I laughed bitterly. That's not exactly an excuse for hiding a daughter from your wife. His shoulders dropped. I know. The honesty surprised me. No arguing, no defending himself, just acceptance. As though he already knew how terrible this sounded. Then he continued. The baby was born early. His voice cracked. The pain behind it felt real, raw, old, unhealed. A little girl. I looked away, trying not to picture it, trying not to imagine the child who should have been part of our lives, the child I never knew existed. The delivery was difficult. His hands trembled. Very difficult. A strange feeling settled into my chest. Because suddenly, for the first time all evening, Ethan didn't look guilty. He looked heartbroken. The kind of heartbreak that survives decades, the kind that never fully heals. The day after she was born, Claire's mother came to see me. I frowned. Why her mother? Because Claire didn't want to see me. The statement surprised me. She blamed me for everything. I remained silent. Ethan continued. Her mother told me the baby didn't survive. The room went completely still. I stared at him, not breathing, not blinking, nothing. She said our daughter died during the night. A lump formed in my throat. Oh my God! His eyes glistened. I believed her. The sadness in his voice felt unbearable. I believed every word. For the first time since finding the phone, my anger weakened slightly. Not disappeared, but weakened, because if what he was saying was true, then Ethan hadn't abandoned a daughter. He'd lost one, or believed he had, for decades. What happened to Claire? I asked quietly. He looked down. She disappeared. What do you mean disappeared? She moved away. His voice sounded hollow. I never saw her again. I stared at him, trying to process everything. Trying to fit this new information into the man I thought I knew. None of it fit. Not yet. Then another realization hit me, hard. If you thought your daughter died. Ethan nodded slowly. Then how did she call tonight? The question hung in the air. His expression darkened immediately. And suddenly I knew we weren't near the end of this story. We were just reaching the beginning. Ethan took a long breath, then spoke. 3 months ago, I received a letter. A chill traveled through me. A letter, he nodded, handwritten. His hands shook again. I almost threw it away. Something about his tone made my stomach tight. Why? Because I didn't recognize the return address. He swallowed, then looked directly into my eyes. When I opened it, everything changed. I felt my pulse quicken. The secret phone, the text messages, the daughter, the mystery. All of it suddenly connected to that letter. What did it say? Ethan closed his eyes. For a moment, he looked like a man reliving a nightmare. Then he whispered, Dear Ethan, my name is Hannah. I believe I'm your daughter. I sat down immediately. My knees could no longer support me. The room felt too small, too hot, too overwhelming. Ethan continued. I thought it was a scam. Honestly, so would I, anyone would, but his expression told me the story didn't end there. I ignored it. The guilt in his voice became obvious. Then she sent photographs. My stomach tightened. Photographs, proof, evidence, reality, pictures of Claire. He paused. Pictures of herself. His voice nearly broke. And Olivia. I saw tears forming in his eyes. Real tears. I saw my own face. I didn't know what to say, didn't know what to feel, didn't know whether to be angry or sympathetic. The emotions crashed together inside me. A confusing storm of hurt and compassion. Ethan wiped his eyes, then continued. 3 months ago, Hannah found me. I looked at the secret phone still sitting on the table. The phone that started everything. The phone that shattered Thanksgiving. The phone that revealed an entire hidden life. Why didn't you tell me? I asked again. This time more quietly, more painfully. Ethan looked down. The answer didn't come immediately. When it finally arrived, it sounded small, broken, ashamed. Because I was afraid. I laughed, not because it was funny, because it hurt. Afraid of what? His eyes met mine, and what I saw there made my heart ache. Afraid you'd never look at me the same way again. Silence, long silence, painful silence, because the terrible truth was, He was right. I wasn't looking at him the same way, not anymore. Not because he had a daughter, not because he lost contact with her, not because he'd been deceived decades earlier. I wasn't looking at him the same way because for 3 months he had carried this enormous secret alone. 3 months. 3 months of phone calls, messages, meetings, conversations. 3 months of pretending everything was normal, while hiding something that changed our entire family. Then a horrifying thought suddenly appeared, a thought so sharp it made my stomach drop. Ethan! His face tightened, because he knew exactly what I was about to ask. Have you met her? The silence answered before he did, and somehow, that silence hurt more than anything else, because if he had already met Hannah, if he had already spent time with her, if he had already built a relationship with her, then the secret wasn't just the daughter. The secret was that he'd started a whole new chapter of his life without me. Finally, he whispered, "Yes." My heart broke, not from betrayal, not from another woman, not from infidelity, but from exclusion. Because while I had been planning holidays, watching movies with him, sharing meals with him, sleeping beside him, he had been getting to know the daughter he thought he'd lost forever, and he had done it alone. Then Ethan said something that made my blood run cold, something that instantly transformed this family secret into something far more dangerous. Hannah told me something about Claire before she died. I frowned. What? His face became pale, the color completely vanished, and for the first time all night, I saw genuine fear, not guilt, not regret, fear, real fear. Then he whispered, "Claire didn't keep me away from Hannah." The room went silent. I stared at him, confused, terrified. "What are you talking about?" Ethan swallowed. His voice dropped almost to a whisper. "Hannah says someone paid Claire's mother to tell me my daughter was dead." My entire body froze. A cold sensation spread through my chest. Someone paid her, to lie, to separate a father from his child. For 30 years, Ethan nodded slowly. And the look in his eyes told me the next revelation would be worse, much worse, because according to Hannah, the person responsible wasn't a stranger. It wasn't Claire. And it wasn't Claire's mother. It was someone connected to our family, someone who had sat at our Thanksgiving table just hours earlier. Someone laughing in the living room right now. And Hannah believed that person had spent 30 years making sure Ethan never discovered the truth. The moment Ethan finished speaking, the room seemed to tilt. Someone at Thanksgiving knew, someone sitting in my house, someone laughing with our family, someone who had shared turkey and pumpkin pie only hours earlier. I stared at my husband, waiting for him to say he was joking. He didn't. His expression remained deadly serious, a knot tightened in my stomach. "Who?" The word escaped my lips almost immediately. Ethan shook his head. "I don't know." I hated that answer, not because it wasn't honest. Because it left too many possibilities, too many faces, too many people, my parents, his brother, friends, relatives, anyone. The thought made my skin crawl. "Tell me exactly what Hannah said." Ethan leaned forward, his hands clasped together, his voice lowered. "The first time we met, she brought a box." "A box," he nodded. "Old photographs, letters, medical records, documents." I listened carefully. Every detail suddenly mattered. "Hannah told me that after Claire died, she found journals among her mother's belongings." My pulse quickened. "Journals?" "Yes." He looked exhausted. "As far as Hannah knew, her mother had never stopped loving me." That surprised me. Based on the earlier story, I had assumed Claire hated him. Apparently not. According to the journals, Claire spent years believing I abandoned them. I blinked. "What?" Ethan nodded. "She thought I walked away." My head started spinning. "Wait," I held up a hand. "You thought your daughter died?" "Yes." "Claire thought you abandoned her?" "Yes." I stared at him. "So both of you were lied to." His eyes met mine. "That's exactly what Hannah believes." A chill raced down my spine, because lies like that don't happen accidentally. Someone had created them, someone had maintained them, someone had benefited from them, and that meant intent, planning, manipulation. The realization felt terrifying. "Would do something like that?" Ethan rubbed his forehead. "Hannah found one entry in Claire's journal." The room suddenly felt very quiet. "What did it say?" His answer came slowly, as though repeating the words still disturbed him. Claire wrote that a woman visited her mother several days after the birth. A woman, not a man. My mind immediately started racing. Who? Ethan shook his head. Claire never learned her name. Then how could Hannah connect it to our family? His expression darkened. Because that was the part that scared him. The journal described the woman. I felt my heartbeat accelerate. What description? Ethan hesitated, then spoke. Blonde. I frowned. That could describe thousands of people. Okay, mid-40s. Still broad, still meaningless. Then Ethan added, and she had a distinctive silver bracelet with a small blue stone. The air left my lungs because I knew exactly who owned a bracelet like that. My mother-in-law, Margaret Bennett, Ethan's mother. For a second I couldn't speak, couldn't think, couldn't process the possibility. No. The word slipped out automatically. Ethan looked at me. I know. No, I shook my head. Absolutely not. Margaret could be difficult, critical, controlling at times, but this, no, impossible, or at least I wanted it to be impossible. Then another memory surfaced. A conversation from years ago, a casual one, one I'd forgotten until this moment. Margaret had once mentioned Ethan's reckless college years. At the time, she'd laughed it off. Nothing unusual. Parents say things like that, but now, the memory felt different, sharper, more significant. I hated where my thoughts were going. I asked Hannah if she was sure. Ethan's voice interrupted my thoughts. What did she say? She said she wasn't. The uncertainty in her voice mattered. But not enough to erase what she just said. My pulse raced. Because whether she was right or wrong, one thing had become clear. Margaret was now part of the mystery, and that terrified me. Ethan looked toward the living room, then back at Hannah. You're sure? No, the honesty surprised me. But when I saw him tonight, she swallowed hard. Something clicked. I looked through the doorway. Ryan was still laughing, still talking, still looking completely unaware that his name had just changed the course of the evening. Then Hannah added something else, something even stranger. I've seen his photograph before. The room froze. Ethan frowned. What do you mean? Hannah hesitated. Like she wasn't sure whether she should continue. Then she did. My mother had a box. A familiar phrase by now, boxes, letters, photographs, secrets hidden for decades. The entire night seemed built on them. What was in it? I asked. Old pictures. Hannah looked shaken. Most were of my mother. She paused. Some were of you. She nodded toward Ethan. That made sense, but then she continued. And one was of Ryan. My heart skipped. What? Ethan looked equally stunned. Why would Claire have a picture of Ryan? Hannah shook her head. I don't know. Neither did any of us. But suddenly the possibility became impossible to ignore. Maybe Ryan knew more than he had ever admitted. Maybe much more. The thought sat heavily in the room. Then Ethan stood. I'm talking to him. His voice left no room for debate. I immediately stood too. So am I. Emma rose from her chair. Me three. For the first time all evening, Hannah almost smiled. A tiny, nervous smile. Then it disappeared. Because whatever happened next was going to change this family forever. We walked into the living room together. The television continued playing. My father was explaining why his football predictions were always right. Nobody believed him. A normal family moment. A final normal moment. Because seconds later, everything changed. Ryan noticed us first. His smile faded immediately, not completely, just enough. Enough for me to notice. Enough to trigger a feeling in my gut something wasn't right. Ethan! Ryan looked around, then at me, then at Hannah. The smile disappeared entirely. Interesting, very interesting. His eyes lingered on Hannah for just a fraction too long. A fraction, but it was enough. I saw it. Ethan saw it. And Hannah definitely saw it. Room suddenly felt tense. Everyone sensed it. Margaret stopped talking. My mother lowered her coffee cup. Even the kids seemed quieter. Can we talk? Ethan's voice sounded calm. Too calm. Ryan stood slowly. Sure. But he didn't sound sure, not even close. He sounded nervous. We moved into Ethan's office. Ryan followed. Once the door closed, the atmosphere changed immediately. The mask disappeared. Ryan looked uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. He glanced at Hannah, then away, then back again. Like a man trying not to stare at something he recognized. My stomach tightened. Ethan spoke first. Do you know her? Straight to the point. No games, no introductions. Ryan's face immediately changed. The color faded, not entirely, just enough. The reaction lasted less than a second, but it happened, and everyone saw it. No, the answer came too quickly, far too quickly, a lie, or at least it felt like one. Ethan crossed his arms. Try again. Ryan looked trapped, cornered, desperate. And then, for the first time all evening, I realized something. Ryan wasn't angry. He wasn't defensive. He wasn't outraged. He was scared. Terrified. Why? That was the question. His eyes moved toward Hannah again. Then finally he sighed. A long, exhausted sigh. The kind people make when they know the truth is coming, whether they want it to or not. I know who she is. The room went silent. My heart pounded. Hannah's eyes widened. Ethan stared at his brother. How? Ryan rubbed his face. For several seconds he said nothing. Then, I found out 6 months ago. The statement hit all of us at once. 6 months. The same timeline. The same period Hannah mentioned. The same period when everything started. My pulse accelerated. Found out what? Ryan looked directly at Ethan, then answered. That you had a daughter. The room exploded into silence. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke, nobody even blinked, because somehow Ryan had known before Ethan, before me, before everyone. The implications were enormous. What are you talking about? Ethan sounded genuinely stunned. Ryan swallowed. I hired a genealogist. The answer confused everyone, including me. A genealogist, Ryan nodded. For the first time his voice softened, became emotional, personal. I wanted to build a family history. Okay, still strange, but not impossible. People do things like that. Especially as they get older, Ryan continued. I started tracing family records. His eyes dropped. And then I found something that didn't make sense. The room remained perfectly silent. A birth record. My stomach tightened. Ryan looked at Ethan. The dates matched your relationship with Claire. Nobody spoke. Ryan continued. I thought it was an error. Then he laughed bitterly. A really big error. His eyes became glassy. So I kept digging. The pieces slowly began fitting together. Not all of them, but enough. Eventually, Ryan discovered Hannah existed. Eventually, he discovered the story. Eventually, he uncovered secrets nobody was supposed to find. The mystery was beginning to make sense, except for one problem, a huge problem, a terrifying problem. Why were you following her? The question came from Hannah. The room immediately froze. Ryan looked devastated, not angry, not defensive, devastated, and suddenly I realized something else. He wasn't looking at Hannah like a threat. He was looking at her like someone carrying guilt, heavy guilt, years of it. Ryan closed his eyes, then whispered, I wasn't following you. Hannah laughed, a sharp, painful laugh. Really? Ryan nodded. I was trying to protect you. Nobody believed him, not initially, not even Ethan. The explanation sounded ridiculous, convenient, suspicious. Ryan seemed to know that. I know how it sounds. His voice cracked. But it's true. Then he said something that changed everything, something nobody expected, something that instantly transformed the mystery. I saw someone else watching her first. Silence, pure silence. My heartbeat became deafening. What? Ryan looked at Hannah, then at Ethan, then finally answered. A man. The room froze again. Another man, not Ryan, someone else, someone still unidentified. The puzzle shifted once more. Ryan continued. I saw him outside her apartment. Every muscle in Hannah's body tightened. When? Months ago. The color drained from her face because that matched her timeline. Perfectly. Ryan swallowed. I thought he was a stalker. The room felt smaller, colder, dangerous. What did he look like? Ryan hesitated. His answer clearly mattered a lot. Then he spoke. Tall. Nobody moved. Gray hair. My pulse accelerated. Late 60s. The room remained frozen. Then Ryan whispered the final detail. The detail that made Hannah's face go completely white. The detail that made Ethan stop breathing. The detail that changed everything. He wore a Veterans Association jacket. A sound escaped Hannah's throat. Not a scream, not a cry. Something in between, pure shock, pure recognition, pure fear, and when she finally spoke, her voice barely existed. Oh my God! Every eye turned toward her because she knew something important, something huge. "Hannah," she looked terrified, more terrified than at any point all evening. Then she whispered, "I know who that is." The room went silent. Nobody dared interrupt. Nobody dared move because we all knew what was coming. The answer, the identity, the next piece of the nightmare. Then Hannah looked directly at Ethan, tears filling her eyes, and spoke the words that shattered the room. "It's not your brother." A pause, a horrible pause, then, "It's your father." Robert Bennett, the quiet man currently sitting in the living room, the man who had spent the entire evening drinking coffee and watching football, the man who had never once become a suspect, until now, and according to Hannah, he had known about her long before anyone else. Nobody spoke, not immediately, not after Hannah said the name, Robert Bennett, Ethan's father, the quiet, dependable man who had spent decades avoiding drama, the man who taught Ethan how to ride a bicycle, the man who helped us repair our roof after a storm, the man who never missed a birthday, the man who sat only a few rooms away. My chest felt tight because if Hannah was right, then this wasn't just a family secret anymore. This was a family betrayal. A betrayal stretching back 30 years. Ethan looked completely stunned. Not angry, not yet, just stunned, like a man watching his entire history rearrange itself. "My father." The words sounded almost childlike, as if part of him still couldn't believe it. Hannah nodded, slowly, fearfully. "I saw him." Nobody moved. "He was outside my apartment." Ryan shook his head, almost to himself. "Oh God." The room felt heavy, oppressive. Every answer tonight seemed to create a bigger question. And every question hurt more than the last. Ethan stared at the floor, then suddenly straightened. Decision appeared on his face. Cold, certain, final. "We ask him." No one argued. There was no point anymore. The secrets had become too large, too painful, too destructive. We needed answers, now, before another lie could take root, before another decade disappeared, before another life got stolen. Together we walked into the living room. The atmosphere immediately shifted. Everyone noticed. Every conversation stopped. Every smile faded. The television continued playing quietly in the background, but nobody was watching anymore. Margaret looked concerned. My mother looked confused. My father looked uncomfortable. And Robert looked worried. The moment he saw Hannah standing beside Ethan, something changed in his expression. Something subtle, but real. Recognition. My stomach dropped. He knew, before anyone said a word, he knew. And suddenly I understood why Hannah had been afraid, because that wasn't the face of a confused man. It was the face of a man whose past had finally caught up with him. "Robert!" Ethan's voice sounded steady, too steady, dangerously steady. His father looked up. "Son." The room froze. Nobody used nicknames anymore. Nobody pretended everything was fine. Not now, not after tonight. Ethan pointed toward Hannah. A simple gesture, nothing more. Then asked one question. "How long have you known about her?" Silence. A long, terrible silence. The answer arrived before the words did, because Robert's face collapsed. Not with confusion, with guilt, pure guilt. My heart sank. Margaret looked at her husband, then looked at Hannah, then back at Ethan. Her expression slowly transformed from confusion to horror. "What is happening?" Nobody answered, because everyone's eyes were on Robert, waiting, watching, listening. Finally, he lowered his head and whispered, 6 months. The room exploded, not literally, emotionally. Margaret stood immediately. "What?" Her voice cracked. "What did you just say?" Robert closed his eyes, as if he couldn't bear looking at anyone. "I found out 6 months ago." Margaret stared at him, completely blindsided. And in that instant, I realized something important. Margaret hadn't known, at least not about this. The shock on her face was too real, too raw, too genuine, which meant one suspect had just moved down the list. And another had moved straight to the top. Ethan looked ready to collapse. "You knew." His voice broke. "You knew I had a daughter." Robert nodded. The room felt impossibly quiet. Then Ethan asked the question that mattered most. "Why didn't you tell me?" The pain behind the words nearly broke my heart, because it wasn't just anger. It was hurt. The deep hurt of a son realizing his father had hidden something enormous, something life-changing, something unforgivable. Robert looked older than I'd ever seen him. suddenly frail, suddenly tired, suddenly carrying the weight of decades. When he finally spoke, his voice trembled. "Because I made a promise." The answer confused everyone. "A promise," Robert nodded, then looked directly at Hannah, his eyes filled with regret, the kind that never leaves, the kind that follows a person for life. "To Claire." The room froze, my pulse quickened. Claire again, always Claire, the ghost at the center of everything. Ethan stared. "You saw Claire?" Robert nodded slowly. The room seemed to tilt, because that wasn't supposed to be possible. Claire had vanished decades ago, then died. How could Robert have seen her? "When?" Ethan whispered. Robert swallowed. 3 years ago." The room erupted again. 3 years, not 33. Recent, current, real. I felt dizzy, because suddenly the timeline changed completely. Claire wasn't just part of ancient history. She had been alive recently, close enough to touch, close enough to talk to, close enough for Robert to meet. And he had never told anyone, not Ethan, not Margaret, not us, nobody. Robert looked devastated. "She found me." The room became silent again. Every word now felt precious, dangerous, explosive. "Why?" Ethan asked. Robert's answer came immediately. "Because she was dying." The words landed like a hammer. Nobody spoke, nobody moved, nobody breathed. Claire had been dying, and she had sought out Robert, not Ethan, Robert. The implications felt enormous. Robert continued. "She had cancer." His voice cracked. "Terminal." A tear rolled down Margaret's cheek, not because she knew Claire, because she was realizing how much pain had been hidden inside this family. Pain nobody had shared. Pain nobody had understood, pain that had silently shaped lives for decades. Robert looked toward Hannah. Claire was terrified. His voice shook. Not for herself. The room remained silent. For Hannah. A lump formed in my throat, because suddenly I understood. A dying mother, a daughter left behind, a father she never knew. The tragedy of it felt overwhelming. Then Robert said something nobody expected. Something that instantly changed the entire story. "Claire told me she made a terrible mistake." The room froze. "What mistake?" Ethan whispered. Robert closed his eyes, then answered. "She knew you never abandoned her." Silence, pure silence, the kind that hurts, the kind that leaves scars because suddenly another lie had died. Claire knew. Eventually she knew. She learned the truth. She discovered Ethan had written. She discovered the letters existed. She discovered Dorothy had hidden them. The realization was heartbreaking. 30 years, gone because the truth arrived too late. Robert continued. "She spent years trying to find you." Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "I looked too." His voice broke completely. "I looked everywhere." The pain between those two sentences nearly shattered me. Two people searching for each other for years while lies stood between them. Then Robert looked down, ashamed. And suddenly I knew the worst part was coming. Because despite everything he'd revealed, he still hadn't answered the biggest question. Why hide Hannah? Why follow her? Why keep silent? The answer finally arrived, and it hit harder than anything else. I was afraid. The room became still. Again, afraid. The same word Ethan had used. The same word that seemed to haunt this family. "Afraid of what?" Ethan asked. Robert looked toward Hannah, then back at his son, and whispered, "That she'd hate you." Nobody understood, at least not immediately. Then Robert explained. "Claire was angry when I met her." His voice sounded exhausted, very angry. The room listened carefully. "She told me things." My pulse accelerated. "What things?" Robert swallowed, then answered. "Things that weren't true." The pieces started moving again, shifting, rearranging. "Like what?" Robert looked broken. "As far as Claire knew, you had abandoned them." A painful silence followed, because of course she believed that. Dorothy had spent years making sure she did. Robert continued. "Claire warned me not to contact you." The room froze. "What?" Robert nodded. "She didn't want Hannah hurt." My head started spinning. Everything was becoming more complicated, more tragic, more painful. No villains, just damaged people making terrible decisions. Then Robert lowered his head and finally revealed his greatest mistake, the mistake that would haunt him forever. "I promised I wouldn't tell you." Ethan stared at him. Disbelief flooded his face. "You promised." Robert nodded, tears forming. I thought I was protecting everyone. A bitter laugh escaped Ethan. The sound hurt, because it wasn't anger, it was heartbreak. The heartbreak of a son, the heartbreak of a father, the heartbreak of 30 stolen years. Then Hannah spoke, quietly, painfully. So why follow me? The question hung in the room, the final mystery, the one nobody understood. Robert looked shocked. Follow you? His confusion appeared genuine. Immediately genuine, not performed, not calculated, real. Hannah frowned. What? Robert stared at her, then shook his head. Slowly, firmly, I never followed you. The room froze. Every nerve in my body tightened, because if Robert wasn't lying, then we had just eliminated another suspect. Another theory, another answer. And that left us with a terrifying reality. Someone else was involved, someone still unknown, someone still hidden. Then Robert whispered words that sent ice through my veins. I was trying to find you. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. Robert looked at Hannah. I hired a private investigator. The room fell silent. A private investigator, not a stalker, not a threat. A search, a desperate search. The misunderstanding suddenly made sense, but only partially. Because one horrifying question remained. If Robert wasn't the man watching Hannah, then who was, and why? As if fate had been waiting for the perfect moment, a loud crash suddenly echoed from the front hallway. Everyone jumped. The entire house froze. Then came another sound, the unmistakable sound of the front door slamming shut. My blood ran cold, because someone had just left the house. Fast, too fast, as though they had heard everything, as though they had been listening, and as though they desperately didn't want to be questioned next. Every eye in the room turned toward the hallway, then toward the front window, where a shadow disappeared into the darkness outside. And in that instant, we realized the person behind the remaining secrets had been inside the house all along. The house erupted into chaos. Chairs scraped across the floor, people stood, questions flew in every direction. What was that? Who left? Did someone just run out? My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. For one terrifying moment, nobody moved. Then Ryan rushed toward the front window. Oh no! The words escaped him instantly. Every muscle in my body tightened. What? Ryan looked back at us. His face had gone pale, very pale. And somehow, before he even answered, I knew this wasn't going to be good. It's Emma, my sister. The room froze. Every thought in my head suddenly stopped. Emma? No, absolutely not. My younger sister, the woman who had comforted me, supported me, listened to every painful revelation tonight. Impossible. Yet Ryan wasn't joking. He wasn't mistaken. And judging by the expression on his face, he wasn't exaggerating either. I pushed past everyone and looked through the window. A car was backing out of the driveway. Fast, too fast. Its tires kicked gravel across the pavement. Then it disappeared into the darkness. My stomach dropped, because Ryan was right. It was Emma's car. The room became completely silent. No one spoke. No one understood. Then my mother whispered, "Why would Emma leave?" Nobody had an answer, at least not yet, but a terrible feeling had already begun growing inside me. The kind that starts as a whisper, then slowly becomes a scream. Something wasn't right. Something had never been right. And suddenly dozens of forgotten moments rushed back into my mind. Emma asking questions. Emma listening carefully. Emma always wanting updates. Emma knowing details she shouldn't have known. Tiny things, meaningless things, until now, until this moment. Then Hannah said something that made my blood run cold. I've seen her before. The room snapped toward her. What? Hannah looked shaken, as if she had just realized it herself. I couldn't place her face. Her breathing quickened. But I've definitely seen her. Every nerve in my body tightened. Where? Hannah swallowed, then answered. Outside my apartment. The room exploded. My mother gasped. My father stumbled backward. Ryan swore under his breath, and I couldn't breathe because Emma wasn't just my sister, she was my best friend, or at least I thought she was. The possibility felt unbearable. No! The word escaped immediately. No! Again, louder, stronger, because I refused to believe it, refused, yet deep inside. The whisper had returned. The same whisper I'd heard when I found the secret phone. Pay attention. And suddenly I remembered something small, something I hadn't considered important. 3 months ago, the exact week Ethan first met Hannah, Emma had asked an odd question. At the time it seemed harmless. Now it felt terrifying. She had casually asked, if Ethan ever discovered he had another child, what would he do? I remembered laughing. I remembered calling the question random. I remembered forgetting about it. Until now, my stomach twisted, because maybe it hadn't been random. Maybe not at all. The room remained frozen. Then Ryan spoke, quietly, carefully. As much as I hate saying this, nobody interrupted. There's something you should know. The dread in his voice made me feel sick. What? Ryan looked miserable, then answered. I hired the genealogist because of Emma. Silence, pure silence. The kind that arrives before devastation. My pulse thundered. What are you talking about? Ryan looked directly at me, and for the first time all night, I saw genuine sympathy in his eyes. Kind people reserve for terrible truths. 6 months ago, Emma asked me a lot of questions. My heart dropped. Questions, again, always questions. What kind of questions? Ryan hesitated, then, about Claire. The room froze. Nobody moved. Nobody blinked. Nobody breathed, because Emma shouldn't have known Claire's name. Not 6 months ago, not before any of us knew the truth, not before Hannah appeared, not before the letters, not before everything. Yet apparently she did. My head spun. How? Ryan shook his head. I don't know. Then he continued. At first I thought she was doing family history research. The explanation sounded reasonable, normal, harmless, except nothing tonight had been harmless. Ryan swallowed. But then she started asking specific questions. My pulse accelerated. Specific how? His answer arrived immediately. Questions about Ethan's college girlfriend. The room fell silent. Margaret looked horrified. Robert looked confused. Ethan looked shattered. And I felt like I might collapse, because suddenly the pieces were moving. Fast, very fast, toward a destination I wasn't sure I wanted to reach. Then Hannah spoke, quietly. I know why. Every eye turned toward her. My stomach dropped, because the fear on her face had changed. It wasn't uncertainty anymore. It was realization, terrible realization. Hannah, she looked at me, and what I saw there nearly broke my heart. Sadness, not fear, not anger, sadness. Then she whispered, because Emma contacted me. The room exploded. What? My voice cracked, actually cracked, because nothing could have prepared me for that answer. Hannah nodded slowly, tears filling her eyes. She was the first person who ever contacted me. The world tilted. My sister had contacted Hannah months ago, before Ethan, before Ryan, before everyone. My legs felt weak. Why? The word barely escaped me. Hannah wiped away tears, then answered. She said she wanted to help me find my father. The room went silent again, a different silence, a confused silence, because for a moment, that didn't sound evil, that sounded kind, helpful, compassionate. Then why run, why hide, why stalk, why lie? The questions crashed together, and then Hannah answered the one I hadn't asked yet, the one that mattered most. At first I trusted her. My stomach tightened. At first, Hannah nodded, then looked toward the front door, toward the darkness beyond it, toward the road where Emma had vanished. Then she became obsessed. The room froze, my pulse accelerated. What do you mean? Hannah looked disturbed by the memory. She wanted details. Nobody moved. Lots of details. The room remained silent. About Ethan. My heart pounded. About his marriage. A chill spread through me. About Olivia. The room felt smaller, hotter, dangerous. Then Hannah whispered, about everything. Nobody spoke, because suddenly the situation felt different, not criminal, not conspiratorial, personal, deeply personal. Then Hannah revealed the truth, the final truth, the truth that explained everything, and somehow made the entire night even sadder. Emma was jealous. The room froze, completely, utterly. Frozen, I stared at her, unable to process the words. Jealous of what? Of whom? The answer arrived immediately, me. A terrible realization crashed into me. A realization so painful I almost wished it weren't true. Hannah continued. She told me things. My pulse thundered. What things? Hannah looked devastated, then answered. She told me nobody ever noticed her. Silence, painful silence. The kind that hurts because it feels possible. the kind that hurts because it feels human. She said everyone always noticed Olivia. My chest tightened. Every childhood memory suddenly felt different. Birthday parties, school events, family gatherings. Moments I had forgotten, moments she apparently hadn't. Hannah's voice trembled. She said Olivia got the attention. I couldn't breathe. She said Olivia got the praise. Tears formed in my eyes. She said Olivia got the perfect life. The room blurred because maybe I hadn't noticed, maybe I should have. Maybe the signs had always been there, hidden beneath smiles, hidden beneath jokes, hidden beneath years of pretending everything was fine. Then Hannah whispered, "She hated that you were happy." The words hit harder than anything else. Not because they were cruel, because they were heartbreaking. This wasn't a villain. This wasn't a mastermind. This was a wounded person, a lonely person, a person who had allowed old hurts to become something dangerous, something destructive. Then Ryan spoke quietly. "The apartment." Everyone turned. "The notes." My pulse accelerated. Hannah nodded. "Emma admitted it." The room froze. Every remaining mystery suddenly began collapsing. The apartment, the photographs, the messages, the surveillance, the warnings, all of it. Emma. Not because she wanted to hurt Hannah, not initially, because she wanted control, because she wanted importance, because she wanted to be part of something that finally mattered. But somewhere along the way, it had become unhealthy, obsessive, damaging. The tragedy of it hurt almost as much as the deception. Then my mother's phone rang. The sound startled everyone. She looked down and immediately began crying. My heart stopped. "Mom!" She couldn't speak. Instead, she handed me the phone. A text message from Emma. My hands shook as I opened it. The message was long, very long, and the first sentence shattered me. "Olivia, I'm sorry." Tears immediately filled my eyes because suddenly I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. Emma had finally decided to tell the truth, the entire truth, and according to the message, there was one final secret none of us knew. One final secret she had hidden from everyone, including Hannah, including Ethan, including me. A secret that explained why she became involved in the first place, and why she could never bring herself to walk away. Because years before Hannah began searching for her father, Emma had already met Claire. And what Claire told her changed the course of all their lives. Nobody slept that night. How could we? 30 years of lies had surfaced in a single Thanksgiving dinner. A hidden daughter, lost letters, broken promises, family secrets, and now, Emma's message. My hands trembled as I sat at the dining room table. The same table where this nightmare had begun. Everyone was gathered around me. Ethan, Hannah, Ryan, my parents, Margaret, Robert. No one spoke. No one interrupted. The house felt strangely quiet, like it was holding its breath, waiting. I opened Emma's message and began reading. "Olivia, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. Not forever, just long enough to finally be honest. Because I've spent years pretending I wasn't hurting. Years pretending everything was okay. Years pretending I wasn't jealous. And eventually pretending became easier than telling the truth. You always shined brighter than me. You never tried to. You never did anything wrong. But everywhere we went, people noticed you first. They complimented you, celebrated you, remembered you. I became Olivia's sister. Not Emma, just Olivia's sister. I know that sounds pathetic. Maybe it is. But feelings don't become less real just because they're embarrassing. And I carried those feelings for years. Then 5 years ago, something happened. Something I never told anyone. I met Claire. I stopped reading. The room went completely silent. Even breathing seemed loud. 5 years ago, long before Hannah appeared, long before Ethan knew the truth, long before any of us realized what had happened, I continued. I was volunteering at a cancer support center. Claire was one of the patients. At first, she was just another woman receiving treatment. Then she mentioned Ethan. She showed me an old photograph, and I recognized him immediately. I didn't tell her, not right away. But eventually she figured out who I was. That's when she told me everything. The baby, the lies, the letters, the lost years, the guilt she carried. She cried almost every time we talked, not because she hated Ethan, because she loved him, and because she believed she had waited too long to fix everything. A tear rolled down Hannah's cheek, then another, then another. I glanced at Ethan. He looked broken, not from anger, from grief. The grief of learning how much pain Claire had carried. The grief of knowing they had both lost so much time. I continued reading. Near the end, Claire asked me for a favor. One favor. She wanted me to find Hannah after she was gone. She wanted me to help Hannah discover the truth. She wanted Hannah to know she was loved by both parents. Not one. Both. I promised her I would. And at first I meant well. I really did. The room remained silent, painfully silent, because we all knew what came next. The moment everything changed, but then something happened. The more I searched, the more involved I became, the more important I felt. For the first time in my life, I wasn't Olivia's sister. I wasn't standing behind anyone. I mattered. I had information nobody else had. I had a purpose. And I became addicted to it. I convinced myself I was helping, even when I wasn't. I convinced myself I was protecting people, even when I was hurting them. I inserted myself into a story that wasn't mine, and before I realized it, I became part of the problem. I lowered my head, tears blurred the page, because suddenly I understood not everything but enough. Emma wasn't evil, she wasn't a mastermind, she wasn't some criminal genius. She was a hurting person, a lonely person. Someone who had let old wounds guide her choices, and those choices had spiraled beyond her control. I continued. The notes, the apartment visits, the photographs, those were me. I never intended to scare Hannah, but I did, and I will regret that forever. I wanted to control the timing, the discovery, the story. I wanted to be the person who solved everything, the person who mattered, and by trying so hard to matter, I hurt everyone, especially Hannah. Hannah quietly covered her mouth. Tears streamed down her face. Not angry tears, sad tears. The kind that appear when you finally understand someone, even when they've hurt you. Then I reached the final part of the message, the final secret, the final truth. The reason Emma had run. Tonight when I heard Robert talking about Claire, when I heard Ethan talk about lost years, when I saw Hannah crying, I finally understood something. This story was never about me. It was about a father. A daughter. A woman who spent decades trying to correct a terrible mistake, and a family trying to heal. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I hope someday you'll understand, because despite everything, there is one thing I never lied about. Claire's final words. The last thing she ever said before she died. The thing she made me promise to deliver. She said, "Tell Ethan I never stopped reading his letters. Tell him I kept every single one. Tell him I loved him. Tell Hannah she was the greatest gift of my life. And tell them both that lost time can break a heart, but love can still find its way home. Goodbye, I love you all, Emma." The room was silent. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. Several minutes passed, maybe longer, then something unexpected happened. Ethan began crying, not quietly, not politely. The kind of crying that comes from decades of pain finally escaping. 30 years of questions, 30 years of regret, 30 years of believing one story only to discover another. Hannah moved first, without hesitation, without awkwardness, without uncertainty. She wrapped her arms around him. And Ethan hugged her back. Father and daughter, finally, not perfectly, not magically. Not as though 30 years disappeared, but together, at last. The room filled with tears. Margaret cried, Robert cried, my mother cried, even Ryan looked suspiciously close, and honestly, so was I, because for the first time all night. The secrets were gone, the lies were gone, the hiding was over. The truth hurt. God, it hurt. But at least it was truth. Weeks later, Hannah officially became part of our family. Not as a guest, not as a secret, family, real family. She came to Sunday dinners, birthday parties, movie nights, everything. The first Christmas was awkward. The second was better. The third felt natural. Healing didn't happen overnight. Nothing that important ever does, but it happened, slowly, steadily. One conversation at a time, one memory at a time, one forgiveness at a time, and 6 months later, Emma came home. There were tears, long conversations, painful conversations, honest conversations, but eventually, healing found her too, because families break, that's true. Families disappoint each other. Families make mistakes. Sometimes terrible ones, but sometimes, if people are willing to tell the truth, if they're willing to listen, if they're willing to forgive, families can rebuild too. Today, as I tell this story, Hannah is sitting in my kitchen drinking coffee, arguing with Ethan about football. Ryan is laughing, Margaret is baking, Robert is pretending not to cry during family movies, and Emma is helping decorate for Thanksgiving. Yes, Thanksgiving, the holiday that nearly destroyed us, and somehow, the holiday that brought us back together. Sometimes people ask me what I learned from all of this. The answer is simple. Secrets don't stay buried forever. Truth has a way of finding daylight, and love, real love, can survive far more than we think. I found my husband's secret phone during Thanksgiving dinner. I thought it would reveal the end of my marriage. Instead, it revealed the beginning of a family we never knew we had. And every Thanksgiving now, before anyone touches the turkey, before anyone watches football, before anyone steals the dinner rolls, we take a family photograph, a very crowded family photograph. And every single year, Hannah stands right in the middle, exactly where she always belonged. And if this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment. Tell me about the door that opened for you. Hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.